Welcome. Today we're going to cover our techniques for building motivation for reward-based training. So a lot of our training is predicated on having what we call a good reward event, a good interactive reward event. And we spend a significant part of our foundation training building desire for a certain type of reward. Traditionally, we looked at rewards as things that we gave our dog. You're training with food, you're training with a ball, you're training with a tug toy. And it was the item that was more important than the event that was created with the item. As our training sort of evolved and progressed, we look at the reward more as something that happens. And we're less concerned, something that happens actually between the dog and the handler as an interactive event that varies in duration and intensity. And we care less about the item we're using and more about how we use that item. So I could use food very much the same way I use a toy. I would use a tug, or I could use a tug toy, or I could use a ball, or I could use a plastic bottle, or I could run and push my dog and roughhouse with them. There's a variety of different ways that I can create a satisfying interaction between the dog and handler. Once we have this reward event constructed, we use it as reinforcement for behavior as we go forward. And almost all of our training is geared towards teaching the dog new obedience behaviors in a reward-based system, meaning they're learning to work to get something they want by doing specific behaviors. And this reward event, the more valuable and the more intense and the more motivated my dog is for this reward event, the better my training is going to go. The better my attention is going to be, the better my engagement, the faster the dog's going to learn, the harder they're going to work to get to it, and the more distractions they're going to ignore in order to get to that reward event. So today we're going to talk about what we call, this is basically motivation. How do we build it? What are the basic principles in building it? So, and we're going to break it down into sections. We're going to talk about how we move without the dog. So there's a lot of physicality to interacting well with your dog in dog training. We can intellectualize it as much as we want, but if you're going to do it well, it's a physical endeavor. You're going to have to move your body. You're going to have to run, you're going to have to bend, you're going to have to twist, and you're going to have to be aware of how you're moving your body and be in control of your body. So we break out some of the core skills and the core movements that you use in interacting with your dog, and we do them without the dog. So we're going to go through some of those steps and talk about how we do that. We're going to talk a lot about the reward as an interactive event. So how do we build that interactive event? How are we present in it? And how do we get the dog to want to do that activity with us? I can have a dog that's motivated strictly for food, and I can be kind of a human food dispenser, and I can make progress training that dog. But I get much better results from a dog that wants to do that activity, whether it's take a piece of food, chase a ball, play tug, with me specifically in an interactive way. And you're going to see, we'll talk a lot about how we do that. We're going to talk about some of the techniques that we've borrowed from different disciplines and things to increase motivation. We're going to talk about frustration, restraint, a variety of different movement techniques that we use to increase motivation. We're going to talk about techniques that we've borrowed from protection sports. So one of the things that I found over the years is when I got involved in doing protection sports is that there are techniques to develop the dog in protection sports that are useful for many other disciplines. What we do online through frustration and restraint also has use in developing your dog's desire to play, tug, chase, recalls, a variety of different things. So we're going to talk about what techniques we've borrowed from protection sports and what kind of bite work. We're not really doing protection work with a lot of the dogs, but what kind of bite work is beneficial for my overall reward event that I'm constructing. And then we're going to talk about genetic propensities in dogs as well. So certain dogs genetically are going to want to play and interact in a certain way. And it's important that we don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole, that we go with the dog's strengths. Some dogs are more naturally possessive. Some dogs are more interested in movement Some dogs are more interested in kind of fighting and roughhousing and using their mouths more aggressively. And if I'm trying to take a dog that's more interested in movement and turn that dog into a kind of tugger, and I want to roughhouse with that dog might not find that satisfying. And in my attempts to make the dog play the way I want to play, I make the dog not like the activity. So I want to steer the dog in certain directions, but I also have to kind of go with what the dog gives me genetically. And there are certain types of propensities that a dog will have naturally, and we can shape them only so much. Also, different dogs manifest energy differently. So our training plans and how we interact with them has to be a function of that as well. You'll hear us talk a lot about what we call internal versus external dogs. And part of that is just how that given dog manifests energy. An internal dog can be very focused, but doesn't move around very much. They tend to sit still well and hold themselves well. And an external dog moves a lot. Everything that they're feeling inside, you see coming out through their body. Their tails wag, they bounce, they vibrate, they have a hard time sitting still. So we have to have a different training plan for each of those dogs based on their temperament type. I need to focus more on one aspect of the training with an internal dog and more on another with an external dog. This is kind of an example of a genetic trait that steers what we do when we're rewarding and working with the dog.